Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of Cultivate, which is our evergreen podcast. We talk about the life of ministry, innovation, and anything else in between. So I am very excited to have guests from Seattle First Baptist Church, where we're filming live on location in its beautiful decorations for Advent. I'm here with Reverend Anita Peebles and also Reverend Leigh Dove, who are the co-pastors here. So, welcome. And I thought, we'd just get right into it. A lot of changes have happened in Seattle First.
Yes.
Talk about it. What's it been like? What's been going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I started as co-pastor on October 10th.
Right.
And I think about 2 days later, we had the Evergreen Regional annual gathering.
Right.
And since then, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, she really just dived in. And people talk about starting ministries and being in transition as drinking out of a fire hose. And I kind of picture us being blown away by the fire hose at some point. There's just a lot of
But you're still
a lot
standing.
Of things. Oh yeah,
You're still here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I feel like, what better way? Just go all in, right?
I mean, yeah, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it.
Right.
Why, but it's been great. We've been really busy, and yeah, for me, coming from the South, I feel like I'm learning a whole new culture.
Yeah, for our viewers who don't know you, do you want to tell about where you came from?
Yeah, sure. So I moved here from North Carolina, and I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I did my undergrad in Texas, did my master's degree in North Carolina at Duke, and then I moved back to Texas for a little bit, and then I moved back to North Carolina, and now I live here. And yeah, you might say it's a little different. I remember my first Zoom interview with the search committee here. I got on the call and I said, "Hey, y'all." And someone was like, "Do I detect a Southern accent?" And I was like, "Whew, we're gonna be in for it here." So it's been a bit of kind of learning a new culture, because it is different out here than down in the South.
So I'm curious, what do you feel is one of the biggest differences from where you've come from and coming to Seattle?
So I think just Seattle specifically, something I noticed early on. So in the South, when you are walking down the street and you pass someone, you smile, you acknowledge each other. You might say, "Hey, how you doing?"
Right.
Here, people are just looking at the ground. And if you do happen to make eye contact, they're like, "What are you doing?"
Right. Why are you keeping eye contact with me?
So that's been something I'm having to be just look at the ground, just look at the ground when I walk up and down the street. But yeah, I just little small cultural differences that, I think. Yeah. So
that's really funny.
Interesting.
So my wife is from Michigan, and when the first time I visited Michigan, and Anita, you're from Michigan. I went to the supermarket, and I want to get something quick, right? Just want to buy something, get out of there. They're starting up a conversation with me, and it's all right, I just want a service from you. Right, Anita, can you attest to this? It's
Absolutely.
People totally want to be personable. They want to know where you're from, and why did you want this product? I'm really, we don't.
By the time you walk out of a grocery store, you have a couple new friends, and people know your life story, and you know theirs.
Yeah, that is so funny. So, Leigh, I'm curious then, just about how ministry is affected. What do you feel? Because you've done ministry in all these different places as well. What's one of the biggest ministry changes for you?
I think here there's a much more sense of, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but in the South, right, we're real, churches are just really into that churchy language, I feel and just kind of just leaning into that churchy language, and it's not, no one's going to be like, "Oh, that was an interesting way that you said this thing." And then here, because I think Seattle is such a progressive city, people even within the church are so aware of kind of those language nuances, especially when it comes to interfaith, because we do have members of our community who do not identify as Christian. And so it's been interesting to kind of be aware of the language I use and the things like that, where, in the South, it wouldn't be, it would be weird if I like said it the way I say it, say certain things here. And so I've had a lot of conversations around language, and things that I've said, to kind of be like, well, this is why I say it this way. And, so I think that's been an interesting learning curve for me here. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Anita, I'm kind of curious. Is like, you've been here for a bit now, but you weren't from here. So did you feel like that translation? Like, what was your journey of the translation process that Leigh's talking about?
I relate to it a lot.
Okay.
Being a Midwesterner who lived in the South and then out here, it's like not that we're like that we weren't aware of our language or that we weren't thoughtful and careful about our language, or considerate, but it's just like a hyper awareness here.
Mm-hmm.
And another difference I think also is just like folks just open up slowly here.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of gotta like pull the relationality out of them sometimes. And like I think I'm a pretty friendly and quite playful person, and so like I had this process of serving this church, where I was like, is that a little bit too much for them? Are they a little bit like less playful, or they don't really want to be silly, they want worship like how they how they're used to it. So I feel like it's been kind of a interesting process of like give and take, where I'm just like, we're gonna do this and it might be a little messy, but that's okay. Because we're just trying something new. We're like doing this in a creative and different way, and then they're just like, oh yeah, we can do that. So it's been a lot of like push and pull, and I've had to learn how to adjust and like maybe tone it down sometimes, like being silly.
That's an interesting insight, because the work of translation, Leigh was talking about, it's not just purely finding the right words, it's also about earning trust, right? Like if it means being playful, or like just getting them to be a little more brave, like to trust you to be brave or something. So
Absolutely.
Actually I love where this is going, and I kind of want to follow up with this, because when I was planning out future podcast episodes, I immediately thought, I want to talk to Anita about Advent, and Leigh's here, I want to talk about Advent. But this is great we're talking about Advent in this episode, because Advent is that weird time of the Christian calendar where the secular calendar, the capitalist calendar, it all just kind of smashes into each other, right? Everyone is kind of talking about Christmas, but for very different reasons, right? You're getting some people who come into the congregation who maybe have never been to church except for one of the Advent services, maybe just Christmas, right? So this whole thing of translating, I think is perfect for talking about Advent. So I thought it'd be interesting to hear from both of you, like, what do you feel is the most challenging to do in ministry during Advent, because of just this awareness of how complex it is?
Well, it's just really busy.
Yes.
It's just really busy.
Right.
And I think that's true for pastors and congregations of all sizes and locations.
Right.
And expectations are just really heightened during this season, because we're very aware that people who do come to church only once or twice a year, they're going to be doing that in this season. And so it just like bumps up the expectations. And also like just tensions are higher. People are figuring out what to do for the holidays, and like how much they're engaging with family and friends. And that just, again, like just kind of heightens the emotions that folks are feeling. And so, so when we're really busy, and then we're also balancing pastoral care in this season, it's all just like a lot. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point, because I was just thinking about even my friends who don't affiliate with the faith, or Christianity, they also have like really heightened expectations. Like everyone's sort of on like 11, right? Like the dial is super high, right? And then the church is in that chaos too. That's a really interesting point about we have to be really mindful that it's just a really like volatile season.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, Leigh, what do you feel like is one of some of the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Anita. Like, it's just such a busy season,
Right.
and having to find the energy as a pastor to be able to, do all of the just all of the regular Sunday services, but then all of the additional services that come with it, and knowing the expectation around that, because I do think Advent is like a lot of people's favorite time in church. I mean, look at the sanctuary. Like, it's beautiful. We've got the garland and the candles and the twinkle lights. Blue, honestly, is probably the best liturgical color. It's my favorite color, and so
Leigh has a lot of hot takes about everything.
Lots of hot takes. And so, but I mean, and it's that, and the expectation of, even if you are someone who maybe is like, I don't love the holiday season, or I don't care about the holiday season. I think we actually all really do. And each time it comes around, we are hoping that, this season is going to be the one that's like truly magical, truly wonderful. And I mean, gosh, balancing family is so hard, and all of the complexities of what this all brings, whether you're religious and in church or not. And so I think just balancing as a pastor the busyness of the season, and knowing that in Advent people really are wanting the best worship experience there is. And you're also balancing all of these emotions people have going on, all of these hopes that they have that they may not even be fully able to name. And sometimes they project that onto you as their pastor, and that's fine. But it's a lot to balance and juggle. And then if you're like me and experiencing the big dark in Seattle for the first time, and you're like, why is it dark all the time? That just adds another layer, and it's just, Advent is busy and exhausting.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is an inspiring episode. No, but actually, I just wanted to dovetail, because like when you said the word big dark, I actually immediately thought about too, is that Advent is also very like, it's a triggering time, right? Because it resurfaces wounds, right? Because I was just thinking about what you're talking about with expectations. So what if like a loved one is not there, or our families are struggling in some sort of, way? We feel like how we're falling short of those expectations. And so that's like a whole layer on top of everything you just said, which I totally agree with. So it certainly is a complicated time. And I wonder, the refrain I was kind of hearing about was like, just really emphasizes the need for those in ministry that we need to really center, like almost like jealously, like to center ourselves, to be very guarded, because there's so many forces of push and pull around us, right?
I think it's such an interesting season to be a pastor in, and to be a person in, because we're a part of crafting so many people's holidays, and like their idea, and like those joyful, warm memories that they want to have, and that they're longing for, like of the candles and singing Silent Night, like we're responsible for crafting those spaces. And so, I think sometimes pastors kind of laugh about it, but it really is true that like we don't experience the holidays in the same way, and we wait until January, until like after Epiphany, or like if we have a break between Christmas and New Year's, it's just like, oh, then we can have our Christmas, then we can be with our families and friends, and we can do that gathering that we've been fostering for other people. And like it's just a part of being a pastor of a church, and like it is something that like I don't take that lightly at all. And sometimes it's really beautiful, and sometimes it's kind of hard.
You're totally right. I just started working in the region for about a year and a half, and last year was the first time I ever took a Christmas vacation. Like I had been pastoring in the local church for the past 25 years before that. And so it just felt so novel to me that, I hadn't done that. But I did want to kind of go back to something else you said in there. I think is really poignant, is that I guess that's the work of all clergy, is that we're creating significant moments, right? That people can kind of connect with the divine, right? And it's a great honor, but it's a serious responsibility, right? It's like we are crafting meaning or like significance to everyone. So, we kind of came in with more of the challenges and more the negative aspect of it. But I know there are also wonderful things about Advent, just personally or like ministry-wise. But I was curious, like for both of you, what is something that you really look forward to, or that is unique or uniquely special to Advent, like the blessing of Advent?
Well, Christmas Eve is my favorite day of the year. And the Christmas Eve service is my favorite thing that we do all year. Maybe like Maundy Thursday and like foot washing, which we don't do at Seattle First Baptist, but I've done in the past. Like maybe that's a close second. But Christmas Eve and really welcoming the incarnation and really thinking about bodies and thinking about wonder and the closeness of God to humanity, to human flesh. It's just so staggering and so beautiful. And like I just like crave that moment holding candles and singing Silent Night, like in a darkened sanctuary, just our voices. Like I crave that all year, and I just love that. It's so special.
That's so good. I feel like a lot of Protestant theology, we don't talk about the incarnation enough. I feel like we could really learn a lot from our Catholic friends, just to get back in that, because that intimacy, that wonder that comes with the incarnation, we don't get a lot of opportunities in like a lot of Protestant Protestant calendars to talk about it. So I think that's right on. That's a good point. Yeah, Leigh, what is it for you, the blessing of Advent?
I think some of my most favorite biblical stories take place within Advent, right? And so probably my two most favorite stories, passages in Scripture are Luke's Annunciation and the Magnificat. And I think, and part of that is leaning into that hope of what an incarnational God means, right? And also just like, when you think about the Annunciation, there's so much there. And it's so embodied, right? Because the angel comes to Mary and is like, hey, you're gonna bear the Son, the Word of God. And she says yes, and I think that's probably the most important yes in all of Scripture. And it's an embodied act that she's saying yes to. And I think it's beautiful, and I love the kind of the progressiveness of Advent with which the light breaks in. We light one candle a week until we get to Christmas Eve. This year, Christmas Eve evening, because Advent 4 is Christmas Eve morning.
That's right.
And we finally light the Christ candle because, love in human flesh has come down. And I think for me each year, as I watch the light grow brighter, it gives me so much hope. And I think every year, we were talking about this earlier in the week, every year I feel like I find it harder to find that hope of that promise that, the Christ child will be born. And each year I'm like, man, we need Advent more than ever. And it just keeps becoming more and more real each year. But that rhythm and ritual of lighting these candles of hope, peace, joy, and love, for me, it's just really special, and I need to actually see it. and be reminded that the light will break through. There's that Leonard Cohen song, there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light comes through. And that's something I need to be reminded of every year.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love what you're saying, because this central idea in Advent of light in the darkness, right? Light breaking through darkness, especially in light of what we're seeing in the world today, right? With the war, the conflicts, climate crisis. There's just so many opportunities to see the dark, right? And we were even joking before about the big dark, right? Like, it just seems like it's real.
Yeah, it's so real. It's so real. We bought a sun lamp at our house this week. Like, we are struggling.
That's a good move. That's nice.
Okay, I feel a sermon is in here somewhere, but when we struggle with that big dark, you just gotta find that sun lamp or that crack, in the window, like wherever it is, right? Like, we need that light in the darkness. I love that thought of, like, we need Advent more than ever with each year, right?
Yeah. I think it's so important to have those times on the liturgical calendar set aside where you can be honest about the pain of the world and how hard it is to handle the big dark, or about mental health, or about just like what is grieving everyone's heart. I think in a lot of U.S. American Christian culture, there's really like a focus on positivity in really toxic ways, and and people can talk about it like Christianity, it's a balm and it just kind of like smooths everything over, but like the inbreaking of the divine is happening in this season all around us. And why is that necessary? Because we have so much that grieves our hearts. And I think it's really important to set aside those times to listen to those prophets call and look at the places where there's injustice and oppression, and actively choose to say, you know what, I'm going to keep hoping because this is happening. This inbreaking will come. Already has come, not yet is coming.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. This is interesting, because I feel like we're kind of coming full circle in like our conversation today, because we started off about the challenge of Advent is the chaos, right? All the craziness, right? This big dark. We got to trademark this or something. I love this phrase. The big dark, whatever it is, right? Whether it be like trauma, woundedness, conflict, all of that is Advent, right? And so it's actually kind of appropriate that we see this amplified in this season, because we also want to amplify the light, right? To say, like, this is exactly why we need the light, friends, right? And this is what the light looks like. So I think that's really profound. Yeah. Wow. So many so much great food for thought. This is even beyond what I was even planning in the prompts. So I know if I just talk with you folks, I'm going to get something amazing. Before we go and just kind of wrap up our time, I just thought for fun, you folks have been doing ministry for a while in different contexts. I was just thinking back the different places I've been pastoring, and I think back, if I could talk to like a young seminarian who's never pastored before, they just started church, this is their first Advent go, like they're coming up to their first Christmas season, right? Like, what would you want to say to them to like encourage them?
I think the first thing I will say is, if it is your responsibility to buy the communion elements for Christmas Eve service, do not wait until the 23rd or the morning of the 24th. Because the grocery store is a hellscape. So I don't know if I can say hellscape on this podcast or not, but I just said it twice. Okay. So I would say that. But on a more serious note, I think, because there is that kind of like expectation of, I think particularly the Christmas Eve service, right? Because you get so many folks that this is the one time in the year that they come to church. I think there's a lot of pressure around that Christmas Eve sermon, that Christmas Eve homily, to say like this great profound thing or this beautiful moving thing. But the thing is, what you had to say, like, the best thing is already true about it, right? Jesus has been born.
Right.
And if that's all you say, that's enough, because that is the good news.
Right.
And that is the light, and that's everything. And so no matter what you say, Jesus is still born, and that's good news, and everyone, like, that's enough. So I think my advice would be, don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, we don't have to conjure the light.
We don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And if we think we can, then we have a serious problem.
Right.
But yeah, Jesus is born. That's
Yeah.
the good news. And if that's what all you get up and say for your homily, that's great. Everyone gets to go to dinner earlier.
Okay.
Right? Like,
So much good wisdom here. Yeah, I'm glad you're at Seattle first. Very good.
Me too.
Anita, what are some things that you might want to say?
Like, yeah, I think like I have pretty similar thoughts in this case of kind of releasing yourself from expectations that everything is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Even if you plan everything down to the T,
Yeah.
like the candle lighter might not work,
Right.
and the mic might go out, and the lights might just like shut off on one part of the Christmas tree or whatever, and like that's okay.
Right.
Yeah, like Jesus will still be born.
Yeah.
And there's an Advent devotional that I've used since I was in college, and one of my favorite devotionals in that is this one. I can't remember who it's by at the moment, but it talks about like, what if we didn't shop for presents, and what if we didn't put up the greenery and the lights? What if we didn't have any extra candles, no extra services? You know, Jesus would still be born. God would still break into the world around us and in us and among us. And nothing we can do will make that happen. And nothing we can do will not make that happen.
Right.
And so let's be along for the ride.
Yeah.
and really try to be present.
That's really good
Yeah.
wisdom. I feel like that even transcends Advent, doesn't it? I mean, that just sounds like ministry in general, is that
yeah.
there's a lot of, like when we do ministry out of panic, or like we feel like we are responsible for the move of God or something, we just get it all wrong. Like we mistake like our influence, our importance, right? When it's not all about our story, it's, you know, it's about this story of grace. And it's enough. Like just point to it and let it do its thing, because it's going to do its thing.
Yeah.
That's good. So much good wisdom. I'm really glad I got to do this. I would love to have more conversations with you folks in the future. Very grateful for your time. Very grateful for your ministry. Leigh, I can already see you're going to bring so much to Seattle First. And
Thank you.
Anita has been amazing in Seattle First, and they're very fortunate to have you. So to know that you're both working together is very exciting. So thank you for joining us for this episode. We will see you in the new year, and thanks again for listening.